There is a place where the land ends and the ocean begins, and the wind between them has been crossing without interruption since before anyone arrived to feel it. Where the grass on the cliff tops grows low and dense and salt-scoured, pressed flat by the prevailing wind into a surface that is more like the pelt of some large animal than like ordinary ground, tough and close and fibrous, holding the thin soil against the rock beneath it, against every attempt the wind makes to lift it away. Where the sound of the sea below is not a single sound, but a layered one, the deep percussion of the swell meeting the cliff base, the hiss of the water pulling back across the stones, the hollow boom of air compressed in a sea cave somewhere along the cliff's face, and beneath all of it, continuous and foundational, the low breathing of the Atlantic itself, which does not stop, and has not stopped, and will not stop. Where, if you turn from the ocean and look inland, the land rolls away in long, slow curves of dark, the oak forest filling the valleys and the lower slopes, the hilltops clear and pale in the starlight, and somewhere in the middle distance, the orange warmth of a fire inside a roundhouse, visible as a glow rather than a flame, a warmth in the dark that means people, that means the inhabited world, that means the particular comfort of the fire that someone has built and is tending in the night. We are going there now. Let the breath find its own depth. Let the body release what it has been holding. Let the sounds around you soften and be replaced, gradually, by the sound of the Atlantic in the dark, the long, patient, repetitive sound of the ocean doing what the ocean always does, which requires nothing of you except that you hear it. The ancient Celtic world is receiving the night. The stone circle on the hilltop stands in its patient arrangement under the stars. The oak forest is breathing, the fire in the roundhouse is warm, and there is room here, in this wide and ancient and wind-crossed dark, for everything that needs to rest. The clifftop path comes to you as a lightening of the ground. The grass here is paler than the surrounding heath, not from light, but from compression, from the accumulated passage of many feet over a long time. The grass worn shorter along the path's width, so that it reflects the starlight with a slightly greater faithfulness than the darker, longer grass on either side. You find it with your feet rather than your eyes, the slight smoothness underfoot, the absence of the heather's resistance, and once found it guides you with the gentle certainty of all well-worn paths. The path that has been used so often, it has become the easiest line through the land, because the land itself has accommodated it. The wind is from the west. It arrives across the cliff edge without warning every time, and every time it is a surprise, not in its force, which is consistent, but in its immediacy, its directness, the way it makes contact with the full surface of the face and hands at once, carrying with it the cold of the open Atlantic, the salt of it, the particular freshness of air that has travelled a very long distance over water and has arrived here still carrying the character of that distance, that crossing, that enormous, uninterrupted fetch. You taste salt on your lips. The cliff edge is not always visible. This is not something to be anxious about. The path keeps you well back from it, running parallel to the edge rather than along it. And the edge itself is announced before it arrives by the change in the sound of the sea, which becomes suddenly more present, more dimensional, more below you, rather than simply ahead of you when you are close to it. But at certain points the path curves near the edge, and there the land simply ends the grass, the pale path, the dark heath, and below it, at a depth that the dark makes indeterminate, the white of the breaking waves, visible even in this light, the foam luminous against the dark water, the only brightness in the seaward dark. You stop at one of these points and look down. The waves below are not dramatic at this hour. The swell is long and even, the kind of swell that has travelled a great distance and arrived with its energy distributed over a wide front rather than concentrated into height. Each wave meets the cliff base in a long lateral collision, the water spreading sideways along the rock face as much as it surges upward. the foam extending in both directions before it falls back and is replaced by the next wave. The rhythm of it is very slow, much slower than you expect, standing above it. The time between one wave and the next is long enough to breathe, to exhale fully, to let the body settle. The waves arrive at the pace of deep breathing, not the quick breath of exertion, but the slow breath of rest, the breath of someone already more than halfway to sleep. You breathe with the waves. The path turns inland at a headland. The headland is a projection of the cliffs into the sea, and the path, rather than following it out to its tip, cuts across its base, moving away from the cliff edge and into the heath, the wind diminishing slightly as the headland's mass provides shelter, the sound of the sea receding as the distance opens between you and the edge. The heath here is different from the clifftop grass, taller, less compressed, the heather growing in its low mounded forms. Each plant a small dome of woody stems and dark leaves, the flowers long since finished for the season, but the dried remnants still present, still giving the heath its particular texture, the surface undulating in small regular variations that the starlight catches along its highest points and shadows in its hollows. The smell of it is the smell of the upland, something dry and slightly resinous. The oils in the heather leaves releasing into the cool night air, the peaty earth beneath contributing its own darker, deeper smell. The smell of compressed and slowly decaying plant material, of the land in its long, slow work of making itself. A bird calls from the heath. Not a night bird, this is a bird that has been disturbed from its roost, startled by your passage. Its call brief and indignant and directional, locating itself precisely in the dark before it falls silent again. Then the heath resumes its silence, which is not quite silence. The wind in the heather is a continuous, low, collective rustling, each plant contributing its small sound to the whole something that the ear receives as the land's own voice, the sound of the upland simply being itself in the night air. You walk without hurry. The path across the heath is less defined than the clifftop path wider, less warm, the ground softer underfoot, the heather encroaching on both sides so that your legs brush it as you walk, and the dry stems catch briefly on your clothing and release. The walking here requires a little more attention, a little more presence. The irregular surface asking the feet to be more conscious of each placement. This is not unpleasant. There is something in the mild demand of uneven ground that keeps the body honest, that maintains the connection between the foot and the earth in a way that smooth paving does not. You are aware of the ground. You are aware of your own passage over it. The walking is not automatic here, it is engaged, even if gently, even if the engagement required is small. The stone circle is on the hilltop. You see it before you reach it, or rather, you see the suggestion of it, the slight irregularities along the hilltop's profile that are too regular to be natural, too evenly spaced to be rock outcroppings, the shapes of the standing stones visible against the sky as a series of dark verticals that interrupt the hilltop's line in a pattern that speaks immediately of intention, human intention, ancient human intention. You climb toward them. The hill is not steep, a long, gentle rise from the heath into the open air of the summit. The gradient gradual enough that the climb is felt in the legs without being demanding, the kind of ascent that simply takes time rather than effort, that rewards patience rather than exertion. With each step upward, the view extends the ocean reappearing to the west, the dark land rolling away to the east in its long curves, the sky opening further as the horizon drops. At the summit, you stop. The stones are around you. Not a large circle intimate, in fact, for all its age and its evident significance. The stones number perhaps a dozen, each one different from the others in height and thickness, and the particular character of its surface, each one a distinct individual within the arrangement, and yet the arrangement itself is unmistakable as an arrangement. The circle defined with a precision that required someone to understand geometry, to know the center and to know the radius, and to place each stone at the correct distance from that center. Who that person was, when they lived, what language they spoke, what they believed about the sky and the earth, and the appropriate relationship between them, these things are not known. What is known is the circle itself, the placement, the care with which each stone was raised and set. The fact that this was done and that the result has lasted long enough to be stood in on a night like this one, which is to say, a very long time. You walk slowly around the outside of the circle. The stones are granite. Most of them are stone that resists the weather with a stubbornness that softer stones cannot manage, that loses its surface details slowly, over geological rather than historical time. Their surfaces are not smooth. They are rough with the roughness of granite, the crystalline structure of the rock visible as a texture. Each crystal a slightly different color, the whole surface a close-grained complexity that the starlight renders as simple darkness, but that the hand, moving across it, finds various, finds interesting, finds unlike any worked surface, because it has never been worked. This is the stone's own face, the face it has always had. You place your hand on the nearest stone. The cold of it enters the palm immediately, not the retained warmth cold of the desert stone, not the exchange cold of the mountain, but a deeper cold, a thorough cold, the cold of a stone that has been exposed to the Atlantic wind and the Atlantic rain and the Atlantic fog for a very long time, and has reached a temperature that belongs to the hilltop and to nothing warmer. And yet the cold is not hostile. It is simply present, simply what the stone is, simply the temperature of something that has been here long enough to become fully itself in this particular place and climate. You keep your hand on it. After a moment, the cold settles from sensation into awareness, from something you feel to something you simply know is there, and the stone and your hand are in contact, and the contact is its own kind of conversation. You step inside the circle. The inside is the same as the outside, the same hilltop grass, the same slight wind, the same stars overhead, and yet it is different. The stones define a space that has a quality of enclosure without having walls, a sense of boundary without a barrier. You are inside something. The something is made of nothing more than the stones and the space between them and the intention with which they were placed. And it is nonetheless real, nonetheless present. You stand at the center. The center of the circle is the place from which all the stones are equidistant, the place from which the arrangement is most fully itself, the place from which you can see all the stones simultaneously without turning, can receive the whole arrangement in a single field of vision. From the outside, the circle is a sequence of stones encountered one at a time. From the center, it is a complete thing. You look up. The sky from inside the circle is the sky everywhere, and it is different. The stones frame it, the circle of their tops defines, against the sky, a circle of different darkness, and within that circle, the sky is the sky seen through an aperture, the sky as it presents itself when the surrounding context has been reduced to a ring of ancient stone. The stars within the circle are the same stars everywhere. They are here, in this frame, particular. The wind crosses the hilltop. Inside the circle, it arrives and departs the way wind moves through an open space that has some structure to it, not blocked, not deflected significantly, but slightly shaped, slightly altered in its character by the presence of the stones, arriving with a different sound than it makes in the open heath, the stones adding their own element to the wind's sound as it passes between them. You sit on the grass at the center of the circle. The grass here is the same hilltop grass, short, resilient, slightly damp with the dew that has been falling since the temperature began to drop. The dampness reaches through your clothing slowly, a cool presence at the contact points, the ground making itself known as ground, as a specific surface with a specific temperature and texture as the particular hilltop grass of this particular hill on this particular night. The stars turn above you, or you turn with the earth beneath them, which from here is indistinguishable. You stay in the circle for a long time. The descent from the hilltop brings you to the forest edge. The oak forest begins, where the hilltop's open ground gives way to the shelter of the valley, the first trees appearing as dark shapes at the field's boundary, their forms unmistakable even in silhouette abroad, spreading canopy of old oaks, each tree a world in itself, its crown reaching outward as far as upward, its shape the shape of something that has been growing without restriction for a very long time, and has found its own fullest form. The first oak you stand beneath stops you. The canopy overhead is not the dense roof of the jungle, it is the more open, more complex canopy of a deciduous forest in the season after full leaf, the leaves still present, but thin. The sky visible through them in patches, the stars coming through in brief appearances between the turning leaves. The leaves are moving in the night wind, the same wind that crossed the hilltop and the clifftop, arriving here, diminished by the forest's own resistance, reduced to the gentle agitation of individual leaves and small branches. A sound that is unlike the heath sound and unlike the sea sound, and unlike the wind in isolation. The sound of leaves in an oak forest at night is its own thing. Each leaf a small instrument, its movement producing a small sound. The total of all the leaves producing a total sound that is the oak forest's own voice, layered and continuous and somehow both random and regular. The randomness of individual leaves and the regularity of the overall pattern. You stand beneath the tree and let it sound around you and above you, and the sound settles over the body like something laid carefully down rather than something that arrives. The forest floor beneath the oaks is soft, the accumulated leaf fall of many seasons, pressed into a deep, yielding layer that absorbs the footstep almost completely, that gives a little with each step and returns. That is neither firm like stone nor unstable like mud, but something in between the specific surface of a forest floor that has been building itself for a very long time. That is the product of many autumns and many winters and many springs, the leaves falling and breaking down and becoming the ground that future leaves will fall onto. The smell of it is the richest smell of the night, richer than the salt of the clifftop, richer than the resin of the heather, richer than anything encountered in the open air, the deep, complex, living smell of forest floor, of decomposition that is also creation, of the process by which the fallen becomes the foundation of the growing, the old leaf becoming the dark earth from which the new leaf eventually rises. It is not an unpleasant smell. It is the opposite of unpleasant. It is the smell of the forest being what it is, doing what it has always done. You walk deeper in. The forest path is not a path made by human intention. It is a path made by use by the deer that move through this forest on their own routes, by the smaller animals that follow the deer route, because the deer know the easiest ways between the trees, and by the occasional human who follows the animal paths, because the animals have already found what the human would take longer to find the line of least resistance, the natural corridor between the larger trees, the ground that is neither too steep, nor too root-crossed, nor too frequently flooded. You follow it. The trees close overhead. As you move deeper, the canopy thickens as you descend from the forest's edge into its interior, the stars becoming less frequent overhead, the sky increasingly occluded by the layered branches of old oaks growing close together, the darkness more complete, the sound of the wind more completely replaced by the sound of the forest itself, the creak of branches, the intermittent drip of water from leaf to leaf where the dew has collected, the distant sound of something moving through the undergrowth that is too steady and too purposeful to be the wind, but too quiet to be alarming. A deer, perhaps, moving through the dark on its own night path, aware of you or unaware, indifferent or simply going where it was going. The sound passes and is gone. The forest settles. There is light ahead. Not the hard, directed light of a lamp or a torch, something softer, more ambient, the suggestion of warmth rather than a source of illumination. You follow it through the last of the close-standing oaks and emerge into a clearing. The roundhouse stands at the clearing's center. It is larger than you expected, the diameter of it considerable, the thatched roof rising steeply from the low walls to a peak above the smoke hole at its center. The thatch pale in the starlight, thick and deeply layered. The work of skilled hands laying each course with the overlap and the angle that sheds rain and holds warmth and lasts. Around the base of the walls, large stones the foundation, laid to keep the timber and wattle above the damp of the ground, to give the structure something solid to stand on. The light comes from the smoke hole and from a gap at the edge of the doorway where the hide that covers it doesn't quite reach the frame. Just light. Just the warmth of fire, visible as a colour in the dark. The orange amber of well-established flame reaching outward from the roundhouse into the clearing, touching the nearest trees with its colour, making the ground at the doorway's edge warm-looking rather than simply dark. The smell reaches you before you have taken another step. Wood smoke and something cooking the long-cooked smell of a stew that has been over the fire for hours. The smell of root vegetables and herbs, and the particular savoury richness of something that has been reduced and concentrated by slow heat until it has become more than the sum of what went into it. The smell crosses the clearing and arrives at you with the full force of the uncomplicated pleasure that cooked food in the cold air always produces. You stand at the clearing's edge and breathe it in. The doorway of the roundhouse opens before you. The hide falls back, and the warmth of the interior presses outward into the cold of the clearing. Not tentatively, not gradually, but immediately and completely, the interior warmth spilling out through the doorway opening in a wave that reaches your face and hands and is absorbed instantly, gratefully. The body receiving it with the particular relief that warmth produces when you have been in the cold for a long time. You step inside. The interior of the roundhouse is a single circular space. The fire at its center burns on a flat stone hearth, the flames well established and steady, the fuel split oak, dried over the summer months and stacked beside the hearth, burning with the clean. Bright quality of well-seasoned hardwood, the flame yellow and orange, and occasionally blue at the base where the heat is most intense. The smoke rises from the fire in a column that thickens as it rises, spreading against the underside of the thatch before finding the smoke hole and departing. The interior carrying the smoke's presence as a faint haze in the upper air that the firelight picks out as a slight warmth, a softening of the space above the flame. The roundhouse has been lived in for a long time. You can feel this in the way that you feel it in any space that has been inhabited with consistency and care, in the way the hearthstones are blackened and smooth, in the way the ground around the fire has been swept so many times that it has acquired a packed density different from the earth outside, in the way the wooden posts that support the roof have been worn to smoothness at hand height. From years of contact, in the arrangement of the stored objects around the walls that speaks of a system developed over time, each thing in the place that works best for it. Baskets hang from the roof beams, dried herbs, bunches of them, tied at their stems and hung upside down to dry, their leaves dark and fragrant, releasing into the warm interior air the concentrated essence of summer fields. You can smell them distinctly from where you stand, something sharp and clean that might be meadowsweet, something darker and more earthy that might be wormwood, something sweet and familiar that the warmth of the roundhouse and the smoke has turned into something richer than the plant is on its own. Along the wall to your left, sleeping platforms, low wooden frames covered with bracken and animal skins. The sleeping places arranged around the walls curve in the way that makes best use of the roundhouse's circular space, each one close enough to the fire for warmth, but sheltered from its direct heat by the distance and by the central post that stands between them and the flames. A figure sleeps on the nearest platform deeply, completely. Their breathing inaudible from where you stand, but their stillness speaking the same language that all sleeping figures speak. The absolute relaxation of a body fully surrendered to rest. You move to the far side of the fire and sit. The fire is everything in here, everything else in the roundhouse, the sleeping figure, the hanging herbs, the stored baskets, the wooden posts and the thatched roof above them exists in relation to the fire, is defined in relation to the fire, is more or less visible according to its proximity to the fire. The fire does not illuminate the roundhouse so much as it creates it. The space that the fire's light reaches is the roundhouse, and the space beyond the light's reach is simply the dark beyond the roundhouse, which is the forest and the night. You sit close enough that the heat is substantial. Not uncomfortable, not the scorching closeness of open flame approached too near, but the deep, enveloping heat of a well-built fire at a suitable distance, the kind of heat that enters the body slowly and thoroughly, that warms not just the surface, but the interior, that reaches the bones in a way that the warmth of stored stone and desert air does not, that is active rather than passive, that continues to give warmth as long as you sit near it. Your hands, held toward the fire, warm from the palms inward. The fire sounds are the sounds of contentment, the tick and spit of sap in the wood, the low, continuous roar of the combustion itself, not loud, not dramatic, but present as a bass note beneath everything else, the sound of the fire doing its fundamental work. The occasional crack as a log settles, as the structure of the burning wood shifts and adjusts, the soft collapse of a section of ash into the bed of coals below, releasing a brief shower of sparks that rise and cool and go dark before they travel far. The sleeping figure does not stir. Outside, the wind continues to cross the clearing, to move through the forest canopy, to come in off the Atlantic and cross the clifftop grass and press against the roundhouse's thatched sides, without finding a way through the dense, well-laid thatch. The wind and the roundhouse in an ancient negotiation that the roundhouse wins tonight, as it wins every night, the interior warm and still while the exterior is cold and moving. The stew pot hangs above the fire on an iron chain, a clay pot, large and dark with use, its exterior blackened by many fires, its interior holding what it has been holding all day, the slow-cooked meal that will be eaten tomorrow and perhaps the day after. The pot replenished as it is consumed, never emptied entirely, always carrying forward some portion of what was cooked before. The pot makes small sounds, not a boil or simmer, the surface of the liquid moving only at the edges, the occasional bubble rising and breaking at the center, the steam rising from the surface in slow wisps that join the smoke above and travel with it toward the smoke hole. The smell from it has been constant since you entered and has become by now part of the air of the roundhouse, inseparable from the smoke and the herb smell and the smell of the animal skins on the sleeping platforms and the smell of the earth floor beneath you. It is the smell of habitation, of a place used for its purpose over a long time, of the ordinary daily acts of living, cooking, sleeping, storing, tending the fire, repeated so many times in the same space that the space itself has absorbed them, holds them in its surfaces and its air, returns them as a quality of atmosphere that the body receives as safety before the mind has named it. You breathe it in. You breathe it in again. The fire settles lower. This happens gradually, over a long time, the logs burning down from their ends, the flame moving inward as the fuel diminishes, the bed of coals beneath growing as the logs above contribute to it. The roundhouse does not become darker. As the fire settles, the coals give as much light as the flame, a steadier and more even light, a glow rather than a flicker, the orange-red of the coals more constant than the yellow-orange of the active flame. The warmth from the coals is, if anything, more thorough than the warmth from the open flame. Radiant heat from a deep coal bed reaches further and more evenly than the directed warmth of flame, spreading in all directions from the heart, with the patient generosity of something that has accumulated its heat over many hours and is now releasing it slowly, without urgency, without diminishment. The coals maintaining their temperature for a long time after the flame has settled. The roundhouse holds this warmth around you. The thatched roof above holds it in. The thick insulation of the deep thatch keeping the interior warm against the cold of the night outside. The circular walls with their wattle and door doing the same. The whole structure working together to contain what the fire produces, to give it nowhere to go except into the space where the people are, where you are, sitting by the hearth in the settling light of the coals. The sleeping figure breathes. The herbs hang in the warm dark above. The pot holds its contents. The thatch holds the warmth. The walls hold the thatch. The clearing holds the roundhouse. The forest holds the clearing. The night holds the forest. You do not know when you stopped watching the fire and began simply being near it. The transition was not marked. One moment you were observing the flame, the coals, the pot, the smoke, and then at some point, the observing became being. The watching became simply present, the self that was taking note of things having set down its noting and simply settled into the warmth and the light and the sounds of the sleeping roundhouse. This is what the fire does, given enough time. It accepts you. It takes you in the way that fires have always taken people, in the ancient magnetism of fire, older than any building, older than any cultivation, older than any civilization. The fundamental human experience of gathering around flame in the dark and finding in that gathering something that the cold and the dark outside cannot offer. Safety, warmth, the sense of a center. The fire is the center of the roundhouse, the way the hearth has always been, the center of the human interior. Not just physically, not just the warmest place, the brightest place, the place from which the room is organized, but symbolically, spiritually, in the way that matters most to the part of the human mind that does not reason, that simply feels. The fire is where the living are. The darkness outside is where everything else is, and the fire holds the line between the two with a reliability that has never failed, that has been keeping that particular compact with the people who feed it for as long as people have known how to make fire. Which is to say, always. You are part of that, always. You are one more person who has sat near a fire in the dark and been held by it, warmed by it, made safe by it, allowed by it to let the guard down that the dark and the cold and the open night require. The guard is down, the fire is warm. The roundhouse is holding everything inside it with the patient competence of a structure built by people who understood what a structure is for. Let the eyes grow heavy. The fire asks nothing of you now. It is burning at its own pace, in its own time, requiring no attention, no management, no tending until morning when someone will add fuel and bring it back to its full voice. Until then, it will do what it does, burn lower and slower and steadier. The coals keeping their heat through the night, the warmth in the roundhouse persisting, the darkness outside held at bay without effort or vigilance. The sleeping figure breathes. Their breath is slow and even, the breath of deep sleep, of a body fully at rest, of someone who has completed a day's work and eaten and come to this sleeping place and been received by it and released into sleep without resistance. The breath continues in its slow rhythm, in and out, in and out, the simplest thing in the world and the most fundamental. Let your own breath find that rhythm. Not the breath of attention, not the breath of wakefulness, not the breath of someone who is listening carefully and taking note. The breath of the body when the body is allowed to breathe, as it knows how to breathe, when nothing is required of it. The herbs hang above you in the warm dark, giving their smell to the air of the roundhouse, which gives it to you with every breath. The meadow sweet and the wormwood and the sweet familiar herb, whose name you don't need to know. The smell of summer fields dried and concentrated and released slowly into a winter night. The coals breathe their warmth outward. The thatch holds the warmth in. The forest holds the clearing. The circle on the hill holds its arrangement of ancient stones. The cliffs hold their ground against the sea, as they have always held it, as they will hold it long after this night has become the 10,000th night ago. The Atlantic continues. It has been continuing since before the circle on the hill was placed, since before the first oak in the valley took root, since before the first person stood on the clifftop and felt the wind from the west and tasted salt and looked out at the grey and enormous water and understood something about the world's scale that can only be understood from the edge of things. The ocean's breathing and your breathing are the same breathing. Slow, patient, without urgency, without end. The roundhouse holds you. The fire holds the roundhouse. The forest holds the clearing. The night holds everything. And somewhere on the hilltop, the stones stand in their circle in the dark, the wind crossing between them, the stars turning above them in their slow arc. The same stars that turned above them when the first stone was raised and set in its place. The same stars that will turn above them when the last person who knows this place has gone. The stars indifferent and constant and beautiful in their constancy. The circle holds its arrangement. The arrangement holds the sky. Let yourself be held by the fire and the warmth and the smell of herbs and wood smoke and slow-cooked food and the forest floor's deep richness and the salt of the Atlantic that is still on your lips from the clifftop by the sleeping figure's breath, which is the breath of someone who has found their rest and is deep inside it, who is not thinking about the fire or the wind or the stones on the hill, but is simply resting, simply breathing, simply being the animal that rests in the warm dark after the day is done. You are that animal too. You have always been that animal. Let the fire be warm. Let the coals hold their heat through the dark hours. Let the thatch hold the warmth. Let the walls hold the thatch. Let the forest hold the clearing. Let the night hold the forest. Let the stones hold their circle on the hill. Let the sea continue at the cliff base, its long waves arriving and retreating, arriving and retreating. The rhythm that was old before the first person arrived at the edge of the world and heard it and felt it enter the body as the most fundamental of all rhythms. The rhythm that the sleeping body knows without being told. The fire is here. The warmth is here. The dark outside is held at bay, and you are inside, in the warm, in the smoke-scented dark, by the coals that will burn through the night, in the roundhouse that holds everything it has always held. Let the breath slow. Let the eyes close. Let the fire do what the fire has always done, and sleep, in the warm and ancient dark, in the roundhouse and the clearing and the forest at the edge of the world, with the sea breathing in the distance, and the stones on the hill standing in their patient circle under the stars. Sleep now.